Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Today I'm joined by Town and Regional Councillor Dave Gittings and Town and Regional Councillor Cathy Duddeck. Dave represents the southeast part of Oakville and Cathy represents the south central part of Oakville. And both of them are, how can I say, very experienced at what they do and very good too. Dave and Cathy, thank you for joining me today. What we've been doing during the COVID pandemic on Oakville Matters is devoting our time to fielding the questions that we've heard from your constituents and handing out the answers in case they haven't got them from some other source. And what we're finding is that we get a lot of positive reactions. So apparently everybody has a different preferred channel for getting information. So why don't we go ladies first at the risk of being charged with being sexist. Cathy, what's the top issue in your ward these days?
Top issue, I think, predominantly is the parks, largely due to the fact that with the nicer weather, if and when we ever get it, people are getting quite anxious to get outdoor, exercise, go for walks, go with the dog. And so the recent announcements that we had made regarding the fact that they can now go for a walk with dog on lead through the parks, but not partake for the, what shall I say, playground equipment and things of that nature. You are still not supposed to be sitting in place. It's a pass-through component.
Yeah. So the good news is on two fronts. First, really good for the 2-4 weekend. And second, our how can I say, regulation of the parks is that you can now go and enjoy the parks. The part of the parks that's not the facilities, the playing fields, the buildings, and so on, those are still closed by provincial order. But we're no longer saying that you've got to, you can only go through it and you can't stop. We're now saying in line with what the province has been doing and relaxing its restrictions or its advice. What we're now saying is you can go, you can play a game of catch. You have to observe the physical distancing guidelines. You still have to stay in groups of 5 or fewer unless you live with them. So there's those things that are coming from the province are still there, but we're no longer tightening on that. And if you look at what's going on with the province over the last week, there have been a steady relaxation, and this is only Tuesday. This is live to tape on Tuesday, and you'll be seeing this several times this week on Cogeco on your TV. And as the week develops, every day the premier comes out and so far has relaxed something else. So you need to stay tuned because by Friday this could evolve and probably will evolve further. Dave, let me guess, is the resumption of construction on the community center the top thing in your ward, or is it something else?
A number of them. Further to Councillor Duddeck's comment in terms of parks and open space, that has settled down quite a bit. People have been getting their news from a number of different sources, and what it comes down to, people have realized, is be responsible and act responsibly. Common sense has a lot to do with it, so that has done away with a lot of those questions. But you're right, Mr. Mayor, in terms of construction. The community center construction was judged to be not an essential service, but that has changed. The construction company has got the equipment back, the crews are coming back, and so we'll see activity inside primarily. The outside is completed at this point, so we will see that restart. And along with construction in Ward 3, of course, downtown rebuilding of Lakeshore has been a big concern.
So the good news on the downtown is the premier never made that stop. he did make the community center stop, but over this past weekend, he relaxed the construction rules so that the community center could resume, and it is resuming. We are as eager as anybody to finish that. And I'm thrilled that there's this little ray of positive news in the construction world, which is that the downtown seems to be proceeding apace and on schedule. So there's good news there. We also opened the Waterside Trail at Edgemere, and
Yes.
everyone who knows what a strong voice for creating that in the first place, my wife will understand that opening that led to an increase in peace and happiness in my household. She was cross with me when it was closed.
Well, as your regional councillor, Mr. Bear, I'm glad that your house is happy.
Well, happy wife, happy life, something like that.
I understand that. Well, the other piece of work that's just about completed is the water side at Gairloch. As you know, we've been rebuilding the seawall and the protection against the high waves and high water levels. And that's almost complete. The fences will be down, and we look forward to welcoming people back to Gairloch.
Your Worship, I wonder if you could maybe, the one thing I think a lot of people were very excited about is the opening of our community gardens, because a lot of people rely on that, not only for using it for nourishment, but more or less a recreation and a calming and, sort of getting out of doors and being creative, so to speak.
Yes, I think all of us were really happy when the Premier decided that community gardens could be allowed, and he changed his rule on that. And we normally open those up approximately the 7th of May. I think we got them started to open around the 11th, and the pattern has always been for a May 2-4 weekend planting. This weather, which has been quite cold, I think should have discouraged anybody from any early planting. So I don't think COVID or the Premier's rules did the community gardens any harm. If there's harm, it's come from the weather. My neighbor, who's quite the gardener, she actually over the last 3 or 4 days got plastic wrap out and shrouded all the shrubs in her beautiful English garden.
Wow.
Try to save them from the frost snap.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody else got through the frost snap as successfully as she did. Kathy, Councillor Duddeck, there's a point I wanted to ask you about, and that is, are your residents as aware as I hope they are of how good it's been in Oakville specifically and in Halton in terms of the incidence of the disease? What I mean is, if there's a gold star to be handed out to the population that best self-isolated in order to flatten the curve, I think it's the 4 communities of Halton.
I agree.
Is that widely known, I'm wondering?
Yeah, it's been one of those ones where people were sort of, until they heard what was going on in other communities, they didn't have anything to really gauge it on. And now they're realizing just how well we did in terms of handling it, being proactive by, what shall I say, flattening the curve. Yes, very much so. They're very appreciative and very proud, and they should be.
I can give you, if you're watching and you're not aware of these numbers, I'll give everybody some very approximate numbers. The number of cases is a very hard thing to judge because you only know the cases according to how much you test, and everybody tests different. But the one thing that the doctors at the hospital have stressed to me when we meet with them on the hospital board and discuss this is that the most reliable indicator of how you're doing is the death rate. So the Oakville death rate is just below 15 per million. The Halton death rate is just below 40 per million. The Canadian death rate is in the, let's say 130, 140, 120, let's just say 130-ish. And the US rate is like 240-ish, and the Swedish rate is like 330, and the New York City rate is almost 1,400. So the question I would ask Oakville, or anyone in Oakville, is who do you want to be? Oakville, Halton, Ontario, Canada, Sweden, or New York? Well, I'm really clear in my mind. I'd rather be Oakville, and I hope everybody else is in Oakville is proud of what we've achieved in terms of beating this virus in our community. So what else is happening, Dave, in terms of feedback to you in Ward 3?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, with the recent announcement from the Premier that the provincial parks are opening, of course, for us, that means Bronte Park, which is the closest. The three of us serve on the Board of Conservation Halton. And so when the Premier announced that the provincial parks and conservation reserves were opening, I received a flurry of phone calls and emails saying, can we head up to Kelso, to Rattlesnake Point, to our parks. And so I found myself explaining the difference between conservation reserves and conservation Halton parks. Of course, the conservation Halton parks remain closed. I believe the three of us have a call on Friday to work on ways of opening them up slowly so we can handle the numbers. But the nearest conservation reserve is, I believe, down on Lake Erie. So it's many hours away for the reserves.
I think it would be fine for you to give a little detail about the tentative plan that we're going to discuss on Friday to open up conservation Halton parks a little bit. By what method can we open those up, or are we thinking about that?
As we know, the parks we have at Conservation Halton are well loved and incredibly well used. And we had some circumstances that resulted in the closure of those because they were just inundated and some poor behavior in terms of fences and parking and so on. So they're looking at, or we will be looking at our pass holders to start within a geographic area and assigning them times, much like grocery pickup or a number of other things we're dealing with, to welcome them to the parks, to enjoy them, and start getting people through the parks again and with good behavior. And we're looking forward to people coming out and enjoying what we have to offer again.
So sort of a visit the park by reservation scheme, I guess we could try to headline it. So Councillor Duddeck, what's your read on shopping? There's a grocery store in your ward that I get more complaints about than any other. You have more than one grocery store, so I'm not singling it out.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you want to. But
nope.
What is the story in terms of shopping in your area?
Well, the shopping by and large has been really well handled. And sort of to build on what Dave had mentioned with the poor behavior, let's face it, anytime you have something like this, you have good behavior and you have bad behavior. Unfortunately, there are some people who I think are getting to the end of their tether, so to speak, and are sometimes demonstrating almost like a road rage, but with a grocery cart. So the visual. Anyway, there's some people who don't want to abide by the rules. There are some people who think it's a hogwash. The majority of people, though, are very, very responsible, very kind, letting someone go ahead of them, seeing that they have somebody who's maybe older they're doing the shopping with, things of that nature. But I think by and large, the majority of them are doing an excellent job. I know that in the one that I visited, they do not bag anything. They don't, everything's tapped, including your points card. And it's up to you to put the things in the bag, and people waiting until you exit the cashier area before entering from the other side. But again, you get the odd one who's just a little bit of a loose cannon.
So have you run into or seen a loose cannon at work?
I have.
What
And
happens?
actually this past weekend, we went to a garden center and two people zoomed in with their car while people were trying to load things. And it almost got into a fertilizer fisticuffs. But
Oh my God.
in many ways, you know, you can liken it to a marathon. I mean, we've gone the majority of the race. We're now getting towards, as you said, the lightening up of some of these rules. Let's just still remain mindful of the fact that these will lighten up more on good behavior. Bad behavior, we're going to have to back up.
Well, certainly, I can tell you that the dividend or the bonus or the payoff for all of our discipline has been to keep our case level and our load on our hospital so low that we're able now to start resuming all the other stuff that got put aside. It is important, I think, for me to footnote that serious surgeries have gone ahead where they needed to, but we're now, the Premier is now loosening on the restrictions of how much hospitals could do, and the caseload and the projections of the COVID-19 are such that it will fit in our hospital capacity. And that is, I mean, and remember, the reason that we had the restrictions was to keep from having a giant surge that would overwhelm our hospital capacity. And so now that we've succeeded in making sure that we have the right amount of capacity and spaced out the incidence of the virus, we're now proceeding to do the relaxation that we knew was going to have to come. And I do believe that it's still important to wash your hands every time you touch anything. All of the evidence that we're getting is that if you touch something that an infected person has touched, within a couple hours of them touching it, there's a risk of picking up the virus. And it won't go through your skin, the doctors say, but we touch our faces more than we're aware. It's like, there's been amazing studies to show that you touch your face like 16 times an hour. And when you ask how many times did you touch your face, you go, I didn't touch my face. Like, now I'm working really hard not to touch my face during this broadcast. So I don't think you're going to see me do it. But I have screened previous ones and noticed, oh, look, I did that. And I didn't think I was doing it. So Dave, I know that that transit is not the most popular service we provide in Ward 3, but it is very important to people who prefer to take the bus to the GO station. And we do have 10 or 12,000 regular riders of the transit system. Are you getting any feedback on transit in these days from your ward?
Well, several weeks ago, well, many weeks ago now, we revised the routes. We altered the schedule to reduce because the number of users have dropped. And I believe that we are going to be re-looking at that or hearing from staff after May 16th in terms of what the loads are like. I've heard from people on both sides stating that they miss the regularity of the schedule, but they're making do with it. And we'll always hear from people saying that another less than full bus has gone by, as the GO trains are, obviously, with the number of people that aren't going to Toronto and the ones that are working from home.
Yeah. Well, the bus riders, when they try to defend us having a bus service, like to point out that the roads aren't always full either. And if you don't have a car, a bus is the only way you get to use the road. So unless you're walking, I guess. So there is this back and forth that we have around providing a transit service. I will say it's important for people to start thinking about what kind of transit service we'll have. All of the commentary, not to call it speculation, that you're getting from the really big transit cities is that they're going to have to cut down the number of seats somehow in the buses so that people can stay separated by a hockey stick. I'm not sure where that's going to go. There are people out there saying everybody should just wear a mask if you're going to be on the bus, and then you don't have to be 6 feet apart, 2 meters apart. I'm not sure where everybody wants to come down on that, but I will tell you that in a meeting a couple of days ago with the Minister of Transportation for Ontario, Carolyn Mulroney, she said, and I thought she was very correct on this, she said the most important step in reviving our economy is overcoming fear of transit and getting people back on transit, because so much of our economy depends on transit for people to get to and from work. And so I would suggest from that what we should expect to see is a lot of effort around making sure that people are comfortable riding transit and making them, establishing the reputation that it's safe. And so
Absolutely
everybody
correct.
needs to turn their mind to what's the best way, and all ideas are welcome.
Well, you
Kathy,
mentioned earlier, Mr. Baird, that roads are often empty. And I will point out that with transit, we have a contribution towards transit from riders of about 30%. And our contribution for roads is somewhat less than that.
I think the other aspect we have to be mindful of throughout this whole pandemic, and the one I see most impacted, is the restaurant industry. And more and more industries, but especially the restaurant industry, who thus far have not done takeout, who have not done skip the dish, anything of that nature, are now having to make a point of providing that service to their customers. And it'll be interesting to see how many of them continue it as they gradually open up, if they're fortunate enough to maybe have an outdoor patio, which I suspect will be the way that most of them will be going. But even still, I mean, there's a large amount of people that don't have a door access to the front. They're in a mall. And so they're really hurting, and they're trying their best to stay afloat. Granted, they're getting assistance from both of the governments, but it's a huge loss for some. I heard one who said they're down 80,000 from last month. So yeah, it's unbelievable. So I encourage people, if they can, to participate, and whether it's Takeout Wednesday or things of that nature, to frequent by ordering in, treating the family for being on this isolation, but also supporting our local restaurateurs.
Yeah, Wendy and I have date night. I'll reveal it's Friday night, and we always order takeout, and that gives me an opportunity to see people and hear how things are going, and stay a little more in touch. And we're trying to rotate our favor all around so that we go to everybody. It is remarkable how good it is. And I appreciate that maybe not everybody can do it, but you know what? There's an incredible range of high-end restaurants doing it to low-end restaurants. And Kathy, I want to put in a plug for the Chinese restaurant in your ward, yes. Oak Gardens. That was the one we last went to, and we have a new favorite Chinese restaurant. So
I agree. I agree.
So we've got a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to make sure that we covered one of the things I know that you always represent at both councils, and that's the general question of morale, not just staff, but also the public. So over to you for questions and comments about morale.
I think, like I mentioned earlier, what shall I say, people getting fed up with being isolated, fed up with being the teacher in the household, fed up having to be in close proximity with your loved ones 24/7 can be quite wearing on people. And I just don't want to see people getting a little frantic when they're out there once the rules loosen up. That's my biggest concern, because as I say, we've done so well thus far. Let's not give up.
I'm authorized by the couple in question to tell you a story about dealing with loved ones, and here goes. Everybody, I think, knows that the mayor of Milton, Gord Krantz, has been in politics for more than 50 years. Is it 54 years now? Something like that. So, and his bride, Olive, is a wonderfully funny woman. And she married him, she says, even though on their first date, he stopped the car, went into a creek, caught some frogs, and took her and them home to his mother, who served frog's legs as his first date. So this is what she said the other day to me. She said, for the last few years, I've been fed up with this political lifestyle. You guys know how much I hate politics. And I've been telling Gord, I want him to quit. He's served for too long. Somebody else can do it. I want him home. I miss him. And she paused and she said, and I've changed my mind, he can stay in politics.
Yeah. But,
so absence makes the heart grow fonder, and presence apparently goes the other way. I want to thank both of you for joining me today, and I look forward to the next episode of Oakville Matters, and I hope that all of you will join us again when we talk about what matters to Oakville. Thank you. Keep well, stay safe, and let me know of any chance to be helpful.